I'm Cuellar. I'm 40. I was born and raised in Dallas, Texas, and now I serve as the CEO of the Dallas Arts District. In terms of how I got here, I had a background primarily in journalism and also corporate communications, during which time I served as a Cultural Affairs Commissioner for the City of Dallas. So when my predecessor at the Dallas Arts District announced her retirement, in terms of hard skills, they were seeking somebody who had a combination of journalism, nonprofit, corporate, and government experience, all of which I had. In terms of soft skills, they were happy for it to be a woman. I was under 40 at the time. I live within walking distance of the Dallas Arts District, so all those things helped. First and foremost, I'm a storyteller. My major in college was creative writing, and I started writing for my school paper while I was in high school and college, and that led to a job at the Dallas Morning News right out of college. And then I started GuideLive.com, which is, or was at the time, the first joint newsroom of the ABC TV station for Dallas WFAA and the Dallas Morning News, which led me to Los Angeles during the first .com bubble. While I was living in Los Angeles, I was volunteering for the public radio station there, KCRW. They had an employee leave rather suddenly following a spouse's job and asked me to apply for that position, which I got. And then I ended up being at the station from 9/11 through the start of the Iraq War. Unfortunately, the greatest advances in my journalistic career followed the worst events of our recent memory, life, and history. And I decided all politics were local and came from California back to Dallas to work for KERA. Was a reporter there during Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Rita. And when I had the opportunity to leave traditional media to go back to the startup environment, PegasusNews.com, I was managing editor there, which was my last newsroom job right up until Belo, where I had started my career, acquired PegasusNews.com and just turned it into Guide Live, which I had left a decade prior. Then when I was in my first job out of journalism at Encore, the electric utility company, I was freed from the journalistic code of ethics, which had required me to stay at arm's length and not be outspoken about my beliefs and not be directly involved in causes that I supported, which I embraced. So that is when I was first appointed to the Cultural Affairs Commission and then reappointed by Dallas's current mayor, Rawlings. And I got to serve on the Public Art Committee when Love Field Airport was updated in advance of the Wright Amendment being lifted. Got to commission a dozen works of art there as well as artwork citywide. So learned a lot about the processes of the legislature at the state level through my day job and about the powers at City Hall, which I had covered as a reporter, but saw a completely different side of as a commissioner and committee member. My sister is one of my greatest inspirations. She's 4 years my junior, but she was a philosophy major in college, and she has had a professional career dedicated to nonprofit philanthropy and management. And when I was contemplating leaving the corporate sector for nonprofit journalism, she was a great coach to me in terms of thinking through the nonprofit realm and what I could bring to that from my background in for-profits. And she's also been rather fearless in her global exploration. She and her husband lived in the Netherlands for years before they got married, or rather, when she was a newlywed, she and her husband lived in the Netherlands before they started their family and used their home there as a launching pad to travel to Croatia and Poland and Greece and Turkey and just really explore the world while they were footloose and fancy-free, which is quite inspiring to me. Having been in an international newsroom for public radio during the events from 9/11 through the start of the Iraq War, I came to realize all politics are local. And by that, I mean that the daily lives of our friends and neighbors are far more affected by the cost of living in the city, construction projects that may add minutes to their commute, whether or not there's a strong police presence or a short 911 response time to emergency calls, and especially education. I think education is the source of solutions to all of the other problems that we face in all sectors and in all levels of the organization. I'm incredibly grateful to generations of really strong, empowered women who have created a really robust and flourishing philanthropic culture here in Dallas. Becky Sykes, who was the founding director of the Dallas Women's Foundation, which is the oldest, largest woman-funded, donor-directed fund in the United States, was very helpful to me in thinking about personal philanthropic priorities and really determining those as enhancements of your personal brand. So she talked about the fact that you can't say yes to everything. And as women, we often have a hard time saying no to things, but saying yes to things means saying no to other things as well. When we know what our priorities are, then we can evaluate all of our opportunities through that lens. So education is my chief priority. I also value arts and culture and a healthy environment. And in my budget of both household expenditures and time, when I have opportunities to volunteer, to make donations, to participate in events, that is the measure against which I say yes or no to things, and it makes it easier to say no without feeling guilty, realizing that there are other people for whom what I'm saying no to is one of their priorities and part of their brand. That said, I think that if we have a harsh, critical eye, in hindsight, history will not judge this period of time in our evolution kindly, because the way that we treat the least in our midst will be seen as really cruel and heartless and mean-spirited, and unnecessarily so, given the abundance that we enjoy and the generosity of so many, to realize that it's not for lack of resources, it's for lack of systems and processes that make the resources available to the people who most need them, whether they be women or veterans or the elderly or children. I would say that education, as I mentioned, is the first thing that people need to be supportive of, both for every person in our community. We don't need to let demographics determine destiny for our neighbors or our fellow citizens who we may not see because our neighborhoods have become so segregated socioeconomically. If we have excellent systems that don't allow people to fall through the cracks, then I think we'll be starting from a much better place. If you look at our global competitors and the countries that have the highest graduation rates and the highest testing rates and the highest happiness and security and outlook on life, they don't have private schools. Everybody goes to the public schools. And when there is no opt-out, everyone makes sure that the schools are excellent. And then respectful truth-telling. It's astounding to me how distorted people's views are because there's not respect or there's not truth. And each has their own truth, but there are some facts that do matter a great deal to me. And if we can't even get buy-in around those facts, and I say this as a person of faith, you know, for me, I'm an ordained elder in the Presbyterian Church USA, and I'm happy, and I believe that my city and my state and my country are stronger because church and state are separated. I want that freedom from the commingling of those two things. So, but I think that there's a respectful way to live into your faith, and for me, it's every choice that influences people, changes lives, and has an impact, and recognizing that everything you say yes or no to has consequences, thinking through the second-degree consequences. But if we could have respect for differences and tell the truth, then I think that would be a great start. What resonates for me is the privilege that I've had to grow up in a family of women for generations who bucked tradition by being true to themselves in really powerful ways that I still can't fully comprehend. Both of my grandmothers were career women ahead of their time, not out of some luxury, but out of absolute necessity. So my dad's mom was a restaurateur, and with a 6th grade education. She had been a migrant cotton picking farm worker, and she supported her husband. And they started, with my grandfather's brothers, the largest Latino-founded business in Dallas of the 20th century, El Chico restaurants. And they ended up serving presidents and traveling the world and sending their son, my dad, as a first-generation high school grad, first-generation college grad, first-generation grad student, both a law degree from SMU and an MBA from Harvard, to 6th grade educated migrant cotton picking farm workers. They lived the American dream. But my mom's side of the family was equally extraordinary. Her father was a World War II veteran. My grandmother moved to Dallas to work for Mr. Stanley at Neiman Marcus until she got pregnant with my mom and was fired, because that's how it went those days. But as soon as she was done having kids, she was back in the workforce as a realtor, and she was good at it, and she loved it, and she worked all the rest of her days. So I've had women in my family who chose to be career focused. I've had women in my family choose not to marry. I've had women in my family choose not to have children from my mother's generation and older, which gave me a lot of freedom. I didn't get married until I was 36, 37. I should know how long I've been married. I'm also from a family that has empowered me to make those decisions, thankfully, and be supportive of me being on my path, even if it's not their path.